Well, hey everybody, Mr. Schauber here, and we're going to learn a little bit about golf history and some of the great golfers throughout throughout time. Obviously, you can read this page, but it says the origins of golf are debated. But the Netherlands claims, that they had some kind of a game like golf being played back in the late 1200s. But throughout the Middle Ages, obviously, it must have been played uh, at least somewhere because Scotland emerges as kind of the accepted home of modern golf. And if you talk to Scottish people today, they're protective of that. That is their game. The earliest mention of golf in Scotland appears in a 1457 Act of the Scottish Parliament, an edict issued by King James II of Scotland, prohibiting the playing of golf because it was a distraction from archery practice for military purposes. Over the years, though, the game evolved, continued, people kept playing, and obviously it gained international popularity in the late 1800s. It was here in the United States since the late 1700s, about the time of the American Revolution. The first golf club being established in Charleston, South Carolina in 1787, the same year the Constitution was written. By the late 1800s, golf had become very popular in this country, and its popularity has obviously continued to this day with millions of people playing and watching the game. Golf has four major tournaments every year and a bunch of tournaments throughout the season. But of all the tournaments, four of them are called the majors, and they are the British Open. The official name is the Open Championship, but it's usually called the British Open. Started in 1860, it's the oldest major tournament. The United States Open, the U.S. Open, started in 1895. The PGA Championship started in 1916, and the Masters tournament started in 1934. Uh, the Masters is the one where you get the green jacket if you win, and of course there's big money in golf nowadays. Didn't always It wasn't always like that. There wasn't always huge money, but of course with TV and the sponsorships and golf has become a major money sport. Look at some of the golfers now. Probably the first great golfer you can see by all his nicknames. The first star of golf was Harry Vardon. First international star, it says. He moved to England from Jersey in the Channel Islands in 1890 to pursue a golf career. Golf had always been a gentleman's game. Golf was a game for the wealthy, for the elite, and the lower class people were not supposed to play golf. Well, Harry Vardon was poor growing up, and so he was kind of shunned from these elite groups. But once he became really good, then of course he could play for England. He could win some major tournaments, start making a little bit of money, and gain recognition for himself and whatever golf club he associated himself with. And so he was the first golfer to wear knickerbockers, which are the pants that come kind of down to the knee, um, instead of the proper dress of an Englishman, a shirt, tie, and a button jacket, which I can't imagine trying to play golf in that kind of attire, but people did. He won 7 majors during his career and 6 times won the Open Championship, the British Open, and he holds the record for most wins in that tournament. Uh, he popularized, you can see at the bottom, the Vardon grip, which is the overlapping grip that people still use generally when they hold a golf club today. The Vardon Trophy, given every year, is the award for the PGA Tour player with the year's lowest adjusted scoring average. So the guy who basically averages the best or lowest score throughout a season gets the Vardon Trophy. So Harry Vardon's influence on golf is immense. Francis Ouimet, you can see he played for 41 years. Golf is one of those games you can play for a long time if you can stay healthy, and you may not be at the top of your game for 41 years, but baseball players and basketball and football and hockey players, their careers aren't obviously that long, but golfers can play for quite a long time. Now, Francis Ouimet never wanted to be a professional golfer. He always wanted to be an amateur. And as an amateur, you could not make money golfing, but you could still win tournaments and the trophies and so forth. But he eventually got into banking and stockbroking and made a ton of money. But tall, lanky guy, you can see he won 26 tournaments, won 3 major championships, including the U.S. Open in 1913 when he beat Harry Vardon and some of the greats of that era to win that title. He was a 2-time U.S. amateur winner as well, 17 years apart, 1914 and 1931. And the movie The Greatest Game Ever Played is about that 1913 U.S. Open championship, and quite a good show. Next on our list is Walter Hagen. Of course, he was playing, turned pro in 1912 and was playing in that era of Francis Ouimet and Harry Vardon. One of the best golfers of the 1910s and 1920s, but he started to raise, you can see the status of pro golfers, improve their earnings a little bit. The money in golf got to be a little more, of course, a little more at a time, nothing like it is today, but it was back then, it got to be a little more than it had been. 75 wins, 45 PGA Tour wins, 11 majors. He's third all time in majors behind only Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. He won the British Open 4 times. He was the first native-born American to win the British Open, and 5 PGA Championship titles, which is tied for most of all time. Like some golfers, kind of later on got into, he while he was golfing and after, got into designing clubs, and he designed clubs, Walter Hagen did, for Wilson Sports. And so obviously that was something he enjoyed and something that probably helped him make a few dollars as well. Bobby Jones is widely recognized as the most successful amateur golfer of all time, and he was a lawyer by trade. He golfed part-time, but in the mid 20s until 1930 is when he was doing his thing. He retired at 28 from golf, but during his years when he was at the top of his game, he won 4 U.S. Opens, and that's tied for the most ever, and 3 Open championships, 3 British Opens, and 5 amateur championships. He was just on fire for about over the course of about a 7 or 8 year period. He won the Grand Slam, it's called, in 1930. That's when you win all 4 major tournaments in the same year, the calendar Grand Slam. If you win all 4 throughout your career, you win what they call the Grand Slam. But if you win them all in 1 year, almost unheard of. That's the calendar Grand Slam. He also, as great as he was of a golfer and as well known as he was, he is just as well known for founding and designing the Augusta National Golf Club in 1933. And Augusta is where, in Georgia, is the course they play the Masters tournament on every year. And so the golf course was founded in 1933, and the Masters tournament, which he also co-founded, started in 1934. Ben Hogan. Ben Hogan is tied for 4th all-time in majors and 4th all-time in PGA Tour wins. He's one of 5 players to complete the career Grand Slam. We won all 4 majors, you can see, and what he did there. 4 U.S. Opens being his best accomplishment. He was 4-time PGA Player of the Year, and I remember my grandpa Schauber had a lot of Ben Hogan clubs. Ben Hogan either designed or sold clubs, and so my grandpa had a lot of Ben Hogan clubs when I was a kid. Sam Snead, just look at the years at the top there, 1934 to 1987. But he was at his best in the 30s, 40s, and 50s. 82 PGA Tour wins. And so 82 tournament wins on the PGA Tour, and then 165 pro wins. So Not every tournament was considered a PGA sponsored tournament or sanctioned tournament. He had 165 tournament wins, and 82 of them were PGA sanctioned wins. 7 majors among those, 3 times the Masters and 3 times the PGA Championship. He won the British Open once as well. The only major he didn't win was the U.S. Open, and he finished second 4 times. 4-time Vardon Trophy winner for the leader in scoring average, and he was also the oldest player to make a cut at a major. That's after the first 2 days. They see the scores, and they some guys are out of the tournament, and the guys that make the cut get to play the last 2 days on Saturday and Sunday. And he was 67 years, 2 months, and 7 days old at the 1979 PGA Championship when he made the cut. He also served in the Navy for a couple years during World War II. One of the greats. Speaking of great, Gary Player from South Africa, just a little guy by stature terms of 5'6", 150 pounds, but always kept himself in immaculate shape. Really was into fitness and kept his body really strong and in great shape to play golf for a long time. He was awesome during the 60s and 70s, especially. You can see 165 professional wins, 9 majors, which is tied for 4th all time. He did accomplish the career Grand Slam, and he won. You can see 3 Masters, 3 British Opens, and as prolific as he was as a golfer in the 60s and 70s, late 50s as well, 60s and 70s. You can see he designed over 325 golf courses. So some golfers really get into the club design, some get into the course design. He was just fantastic. The King, Arnold Palmer. Arnold Palmer was one of the most popular golfers ever, and he had 26 wins as an amateur, and then he said, well, I better turn pro, and then he had 95 wins as a pro. He won 62 PGA Tour tournaments, which is 5th all time, and 7 majors, including 4 Masters. He was the guy who popularized golf for the common man, if you will, especially by the late 50s and throughout the 60s. He had what was called Arnie's Army, which were his fans that would just follow him from hole to hole and showed up in droves at his tournaments that he played in. He was super popular, had a huge swing, was smiling, happy, was a nice guy, and he was just the most popular golfer around for quite a long time. You can see 4-time Vardon winner, 2-time PGA Player of the Year, 4 times he led the tour in money earnings, and of course he has a drink named after him as well. Lee Trevino was playing at this time when Gary Player and Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus, as we'll talk about in a minute, were playing. Lee Trevino is probably one of the most underrated golfers, especially of his era, if not of all time. Lee Trevino was always joking around, known for his smile and his laughs on the course. He was but a heck of a golfer. 89 pro wins, including 29 PGA Tour wins, 6 major championships that he won. He won 2 U.S. Open, 2 British Opens, and 2 PGAs. The Masters is the only one he didn't win to complete the career Grand Slam. 5-time Vardon Trophy winner, though, and he was even the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year in 1971. He was a great golfer. Jack Nicklaus. Jack Nicklaus, the Golden Bear, is the all-time leader in major tournament wins. Jack Nicklaus golfed throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Of course, in his later years, he played on the senior tour, but he was playing when, again, Gary Player, Lee Trevino, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, there were some great players going at each other all the time in the 60s and 70s. 115 pro wins, 73 of them PGA Tour wins. Like I said, 18 majors, first all time. 6 Masters, that's the most all time. 4 U.S. Open wins, 3 British Open, and 5 PGA Championship wins. He was the first player, as you can see, to complete the double and triple career Grand Slams. And not only that, not only did he win 18 majors, he finished second in majors 19 times and third in majors 9 times. I mean, the guy could have 30 majors. He's an incredible golfer, tremendously accurate, great long hitter, long driver, great putter, which of course you have to be to win as much as he did. He led the tour in money winnings 8 times and 5-time PGA Player of the Year. He is definitely one of the greats ever. Tom Watson, extremely underrated, I think. 8 major wins, including 5 British Opens, which is second all time, only to Harry Vardon. And he led the tour, in money winnings 5 times and 6-time PGA Player of the Year, which is second all time. Tom Watson oftentimes got overlooked somehow. I don't know how you get overlooked when you win 8 majors, but he got overlooked a little bit because he was more quiet and reserved and didn't have quite the popularity necessarily that Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus had during that era. But he was obviously, you can see, a great golfer. And now we'll get to a couple that are still going. Phil Mickelson, lefty, 5 major championships. He's one of the most popular players on the tour. You can see he's been very successful. 3 Masters, a British Open, a PGA Championship. The only one he hasn't won is the U.S. Open, and he finished second in the U.S. Open 6 times. He's been so close to the career Grand Slam, but he's a likable guy and a great short game. He's a great golfer. Tiger Woods is perhaps the most popular golfer of all time. Arnold Palmer definitely is up there, but Tiger Woods is the guy that really, if Arnold Palmer made golf popular for the common man in the 1950s and 60s and into the 70s, Tiger Woods kind of did the same thing with a resurgence of golf popularity in the late 90s into the early 2000s. Like I say, golf had always been such in the old days, was a rich man's, elite man's sport. Proper, of course, we know the golf clap. You don't yell and scream. You're not supposed to, right? Traditionally, a golfer makes a nice shot, you give the nice little golf clap. But of course, that's all changed now. But Tiger Woods is kind of the guy that his fans would follow him around like Arnold Palmer's would, and from hole to hole on a course, and they would go nuts and just screaming and yelling, and he kind of made golf. Tiger Woods did look so easy for so many years that the average Joe thought he could go out and play and do well. And of course, golf is not one of those games you can usually do that. You can see what Tiger Woods has accomplished. Of course, over 100 professional wins, first all time in PGA Tour wins, tied for first. 15 majors, which is second all time, and he's had the career Grand Slam achieved 3 times. You can see his 4 Masters, 3 U.S., 3 British Opens, and 4 PGAs. 11-time Player of the Year on the PGA Tour, which is first all time, and he also holds the record for 10 times leading the tour in money. 9-time Vardon winner, which is also first all time. You can see what he did. He was the AP Athlete of the Decade for the 2000s. You can see when he was at his best, which was the late 90s to the late 2000s. He racked up so many wins, almost all of his wins during that time. Of course, he had a major scandal envelop him involving his wife, and their marriage dissolved, and he had some major problems psychologically. He also had some injuries with his knees, his back, different parts of his body that have kind of broken down over the years, but he was never the same after that scandal in the very late 2000s, early 2010s. But you can see what he did while he was on top of his game. He was just about unbeatable. He'd wear his signature red shirt on Sundays, which is the final day of the tournament. And usually he had the tournament won during those years of his height. Uh, Before the tournament started, he would intimidate his opponents so much that I don't think anybody thought they could play with him. And he won the thing on intimidation usually. I think, of course, he went out and proved it on the course. He was unbelievably good, but he was so dominating that golf had really not seen anything like that, at least for a long time, if they ever had. So that's Tiger Woods. Rory McIlroy from Northern Ireland has had some tremendous tournaments. He's won 4 majors. He's on the list because he's one of the better players still going. But golf is so up and down. You can be a hero one week and a zero the next. So. But you can see what he did in 2011. He won the U.S. Open, set a record score of 16 under par, and then he won by a record 8 strokes in the 2012 PGA Championship. Um, and he's won 2 of those overall, and he's won a British Open. So he just needs the Masters to complete the career Grand Slam. But youngest player to reach $10 million in career earnings on the tour, and he did that in 2012. When he's on, he's as good as anybody. And Jordan Spieth. I put Jordan Spieth on here because when he started, he looked like he was going to take the golf world by storm, and he still very well may. He's won 3 majors and 11 PGA tournaments, 14 professional tournaments overall. But in 2015, he won the Masters and the U.S. Open, and then he won the British Open in 2017. Vardon Trophy winner in both those years, 2015 and 17, and he just like he was unstoppable. He's got a he's got a great feel for the game of golf, but um, he kind of had a meltdown at one of the major tournaments and lost. Well, didn't win when it looked like he probably should have won the tournament, and it kind of messed him up, I think, a little psychologically for a bit. But I would expect Jordan Spieth will be back and better than ever at some point. And that'll conclude our golf for now. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to a little bit about the golfers, and of course you can read the slides and everything, but sometimes a few little stories here or there, or a few more details about a golfer are always kind of fun to hear. So that's our golf PowerPoint, and hope you enjoyed it.